It's finally happening. Bounce is getting a rework, dude. Let's do this. Yo, what is going on, my fellow weebs? Chrono here, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're actually going to go over the rework announcement, a renewal announcement for Bouncer. It's going to be popping up at NGS. If you guys are new here, my name is Chrono. I'm primarily cover PSO2 content. Would much appreciate a subscribe. Let's work our way towards that 10K mark. Hopefully, oh man, by the end of next year, we'll see. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. So with the headline, we got an announcement that I don't think anyone was expecting. I know I absolutely was not, or I would have, I would not have reacted the way that I did. But yeah, all that being said, Bouncer is getting a renewal. So we're gonna go ahead and watch it really quick again, in case you guys didn't get a chance to see it. And then I'm gonna go over with you guys what I noticed just from watching the quick little renewal that they showed us, and what I expect to see, and what my what's the word I'm looking for? My theory crafting ideas are. Not theory crafting, I guess, but my guesses are on what we'll see when it comes to Bouncer. But let me hop over to the YouTube channel. All right, so I'm gonna let this play through once really quick for you guys in case you didn't get a chance to see it. So here you go. Man, I was so hype. I missed so much the first time looking at this trailer. Like, watching it afterwards, I noticed so many things I didn't notice before. This is where I lost my mind. It was when they showed the weapon action acting different. It's so obvious now looking at it, and I think that's about it. Yep, okay. So let's go ahead and pop back really quick, and let's go ahead and take a look. I'm gonna unmute it from now on, so don't worry too much about the audio there. But I'm gonna run through really fast the things that I see, and then we'll pause it right after, what it is that we're seeing. So first off, they're showing off the new effects basically on the PAs, and the effects look really good. The one thing that people didn't notice is this looks a lot like Etwol's effects, which these effects are their Etwol is a sound class from base PSO2. Looks a little weird though, is the sword animation here looks a little bit awkward. Like, I don't know if this is supposed to be the end of the sword or it looks a little weird to me here, but I mean the effects do look better for sure. They're very shiny. Even the PB in there looks pretty good. Those are just the PB. So now they show off the weapon action. So first it says the changes to the soaring blade weapon action behavior. So this is the weapon action now. In case you're curious what our current weapon action does, our current weapon action, you press weapon action, it doesn't actually move your character at all. It doesn't interact with anything you're currently doing. It just fires off a set of blades. And if you take a skill, there's a skill you can get that makes it so your weapon action also shields you. So it doesn't do this by default. You have blades that fire off when you press the weapon action, and the skill that you take also shields you. So if you were to do this like a target, something that hit you, you block with the shield, and then you also shoot off blades at the same time. They're not really interacting with one another. It just happens to happen because both of those skills happen whenever you press weapon action. So this situation, what they're doing, they're showing off a very specific type of weapon action where you're moving while shooting off two blades. You can see them swirling off that way. This is very akin to base PSO2's bouncer weapon action. Now, what they didn't show is they didn't show the neutral weapon action. Normally, when you get this weapon action when you press a directional key and press weapon action. Normally, when you press a neutral weapon action, your character did kind of like a weird, like, I can't even really describe it, just like a little weird animation, and you would just fire two blades forward, almost like kind of like you're shooting them off of your swords. So I'm not sure if that's gonna be something how that interacts here. But keep in mind, a lot of times they show these things off and they don't really show us all of what it's capable of doing. And a lot of times they just don't show us all of what the class is going to get. In a lot of situations, we've seen previews for stuff and then like missed over half of it from what they showed off. So I wouldn't take this as a grain of salt. There's probably more to this than meets the eye, but I'm just letting you guys know what I see currently and the comparisons I get to draw from them. So here they show off the weapon action, using weapon action through a skill. You can kind of see the animation of you dodging the skill itself. So it's not like you're just dodging in general, but you are proccing an actual dodge, which you can hear the counter sound if you play through the video again. And then a follow-up attack. Now, that follow-up is basically the same follow-up we get from step countering. It's the exact same follow-up, actually, if you watch it closely. So we just swipe with both swords, same as beforehand. And they don't really show much else outside of that. It's just that there. I thought they did. Hold on. Didn't they show more during the original? I might be tweaking, but I'm going to check something in a little bit here. But you know, actually hold on a sec. Okay. Can't confirm I was tweaking. It's coming up in a second here, but we'll talk about it. So you can see they activate something here. For those who aren't really akin to this, this is the activation of Fanatic Blade. But you're going to notice something different happens when they activate this. So pay attention to the left side of the screen. You can see that blades are actually firing off after they do that activation of the skill. So this is essentially the exact, not the exact same effect, but a very similar effect to a base PSO2 potential on a weapon, the Jupiter Talus, lightning blades. It's also, I mean, technically it's, yeah, I was gonna say it's also an S grade augment, but it's exact same potential, exact same effect, where whenever you attack with the Photon Art, you fire off blades at the same time. Now, we don't know if these blades are going to behave like regular blades do, where they regen PP or anything along those lines, but what we do know is that hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm not sure why they would keep both of these, but this is the replacement for Fanatic Blade because it has the exact same or very similar animation to its activation, and it behaves completely differently, which you guys understand. If nothing else changed, I was happy that changed, because Fanatic Blade has to be one of the dumbest cooldowns that we have currently in the game. I am not a fan of it in the slightest, and it's always something I talk about when I talk about bouncer changes, is to throw that thing out completely. Honestly, even if they threw it out and gave us nothing else and just baked in a bit more damage into our actual kit, I would take that any day of the week over using that ability, because it was so incredibly boring and you couldn't ignore it. I know people are like, oh, well, just don't press the button. No, it was so good that you could not ignore it. It was just too good. But yeah, so we've got activation and then shoots off blades as you're attacking, which is sick. I love that so much. We'll have to see how that actually favors into PP management, into overall damage, into what its cooldown is going to be, so on and so forth. So that's super cool. But one thing you notice at the very end of this is what I was talking about beforehand. I thought there was something extra, is they just they step out of the way of something. So I'm assuming step count is probably still a thing. We'll have to see how it works out, but keep in mind that when they did the weapon action, they did neutral weapon action, meaning there was no PA currently while that was going on. Now, we're going to come back to that and talk about that in just a second here as well, but it is worth mentioning that we haven't seen them interrupt any PAs with this weapon action. Back in base PSO2 with the weapon action, you could basically interrupt any PA. I don't know of a PA that would lock you so hard that you couldn't interrupt it with the weapon action, to then counter to get out of the way of, to basically get out of dodge. In the base game, it didn't have a follow-up normal attack. In this game, it does. But in base, it didn't have a follow-up normal attack. We have a weapon action, and we have a follow-up normal attack. So kind of cool how that works out. But we'll have to see how this actually translates into game. This next one is, this is nice. So additions and changes to the Soaring Blade class skills. I think it's been saying this across the bottom the entire time. Yeah, weaponized behavior, and then addition changes to Soaring Blade class skills. So they say that the class skills, and they show something pretty insane with the Photon Arts, which, I mean, realistically, it's probably a class skill is how this works out. But you guys can see we have one PA, which is basically one of our better AoE PAs, directly into the second half of our gap closer. And then they show it again by showing us the beginning of, I almost said Kestrel. And then they actually showed us the beginning of Harrier into basically a little X-Blade finish that we usually have. And that's from one of the newer PAs that we got. You can use it as like a gap closer. But basically, the long story short, I don't remember PA names. Do you actually remember the instance that you used them in? But the long story short is it looks like you're able to now mix and match PAs. All of our PAs have a two-part or two-step PAs. Basically, you use the PA button once, and then if you use it a second time, you get the second half of the PA. You can let it rock all the way through from like a start to finish, or you can press the PA button again and get a second, or get a different, second half of the PA itself. What they're allowing us to do now, it seems that you can mix and match those PAs, so you can get the first half of one PA and the second half of a different one, meaning that there's actually some depth to bounce their combos, and you might be able to pivot on the fly in case something happens where, let's say, you start with your regular PA, but then the target starts to move and you need to gap close to them, Or if you start with a different PA and it's like, oh, the target gets broken, you can move into something that might be a bit more committive to do more damage. So that's super cool. I'm actually really happy to see something like that be added to the class itself. There's one thing I do want to talk about as well, because it is something that's brought up by a good friend of mine, Kai, and it is worth mentioning because realistically, it's something that you have to keep in mind. A big part of what most bouncers were very excited for when we took a look at the class was the change to the weapon action. Now, the weapon action's current behavior, the way that it works out right now, the reason I'm talking about it so much is because there's so much to it, is you press weapon action, you shoot 2 blades in front of you, you take a skill that allows you to block damage around you. And then there's another skill called Blade Art's Parry that if you block damage during a PA, specifically if you press weapon action, it shoots off a giant blade, like drops down on top of your target. It appears and drops on your target. You're also able to press weapon action in the middle of a PA to block a skill. Now, that block happens regardless if you're pressing weapon action during a PA or not during a PA. And that's kind of the way the block itself actually works. But if you press block during a PA specifically, and it blocks a skill, you get the counter. That's Blade Art's Parry, essentially. When we first saw this, we were very excited for it because I thought it was super cool. Problem is that you can only use it once per PA. And if you guys know anything about PSO2, you know that there are tons of multi-hit attacks. And we get attacked through a lot of our PAs, and Bouncer Soaring Blades is some of the longest PAs in the game. Not saying it is the only class with long PAs, but we have some of the longest. And the biggest irritation is the interruption of those PAs repeatedly. So something like Blade Art's Parry was going to be, you know, kind of a nice welcome to the class at the time, but it ended up being probably the one thing that made Bouncer Soaring Blades one of the most unfun weapons to actually optimize in the game. Which brought about the ability called BAPS, or Blade Art's Parry Step Counter, which was tech that bouncers learned, Soaring Blade bouncers specifically, that you could Blade Art's Parry, which is press your weapon action during a PA, and step counter at the exact same time. So I'm going to show you guys an example really quick of Blade Art's Parry step counter. My good buddy Kyle, like I mentioned earlier, is another Soaring Blade bouncer main. Plays Soaring Blade JBs because realistically, if you're playing Soaring Blade optimal, you're playing Soaring Blade JBs. You really can't ignore the weapon. But that's besides the point. This is his solo run. I'll leave a link in the video description to the run itself and also to his channel in case you guys want to subscribe and check out a really good bouncer. But here's 2 examples of Blade Art's Parry step counter, or BAPS for short. It's going to happen kind of fast. So what I want you guys to pay attention to is kind of how lagged his step counter happens after pressing after basically coming into contact with damage. This first one's going to be a little bit more difficult to see because it's a laser, which is consistent damage, which you'd imagine that you can always do this stuff for beforehand. But basically the way this works out is a single swing is if it's long enough, or basically if it has enough active frames through your character, you're able to block and then also step counter it before the swing actually finishes. And you'll see that with one of the attacks that comes up afterwards. So you can see here, the laser starts to pop up on him. And what's going to happen is as soon as this laser turns purple, you're going to see right around here, the actual blade fall from him pressing weapon action and move into step counters right afterwards. Now this one, again, it's a little easier for it to happen this way. And honestly, the actual block for me just makes it easier for me not to take damage to the first hit. But you can see the blade falls right there and he moves into step counters here. And this attack right here is where you can kind of really see it. So he's going to go into a Harrier and then do the second tap of Harrier to finish it up a little faster, since, you know, it's further away anyway, so you can get some better damage in here. And here's where he's going to press block right here. You can kind of see the block happen, and you'll see that the blade's going to fall right over here. The blade falls down, and then the step counter happens. So that's the 2 hits from the step counter with the blade falling down at the same time. So it depends on the actual attack that's coming at you. It also depends on the timing from the PA that you're using, but essentially you can do some pretty massive amounts of damage with using this tech. And you would think, hey, you know, why would you be upset about tech like this when you can do some awesome damage with it, and it's very powerful and, you know, all that good stuff? Well, the problem is it's hella inconsistent. So all that being said, basically it's not tech that we really want to use. Sometimes certain attacks just don't work for it, like the single hand slam from Solus. I don't think anyone has been able to properly BAPS that ability. It also changes depending upon the PA that you use. So the timing is different if you were to use Pheasant versus Harrier. So it's just an absolute nightmare to try to optimize around. Even if you don't optimize around it, you just know that you're leaving damage on the table for something that really doesn't feel good to try to use. So as players, as Soaring Blade players, even now as JEPU players, because JEPU players have been using BAPS, funny enough, because of the changes that happen with Bouncer, it's actually optimal for them to use a multi-weapon with Soaring Blades. It's just not a fun thing to have to deal with as BAPS. Basically, JetBoot's got all of the downsides of having to use Soaring Blades, and Soaring Blades got all the bonuses of using JetBoot. So that's kind of funny. But that's besides the point. When you're looking at something like BAPS, it's great tech, but it's inconsistent and it's annoying. So being that all of that is tied to weapon action, seeing something like the weapon action changing is really, really cool, especially seeing as we have a proper follow-up to it. Now, that does bode the question, is this the death of BAPS completely? Well, according to my good buddy Kai, not exactly, because we do see some things during the actual, during the headlines. Let me get that pulled up really quick, 1 sec. All right, so taking a look at this footage, you're gonna see it swap over to the bounce that's over here on the left-hand side really quick. You see them actually go for an attack, and immediately they Blade Arts parry the attack, right? So we can't really tell because you don't actually see their palette anywhere, but you can see the Blade Arts parry happens. You see the sword come crashing in. It is a new animation too, which is kind of cool. And they continue their attack itself, which bodes the question: does that mean that BAPS is still going to be a thing? Is it going to work the same way? Well, reality is that we don't know exactly. The big thing about BAPS is the reason why it worked the way that it did was because, one, you were able to step counter at the same time as you were able to actually weapon action. So if it doesn't function the way that it did previously, it's doubtful that it will function this way now. And two, we already have a skill similar to how it works in game, and it's not on weapon action. It is on its own skill, which is Waker and Hot Parry. Waker has Hot Parry, which allows them to essentially kind of do the same thing, where they're able to press a button, but it's on a cooldown. I believe it's like on a 15-second cooldown, maybe like a 5-second cooldown. I don't remember what their cooldown is. I don't play Waker, even though my wife does. I don't play Waker. But essentially, Hot Parry is a skill that works very, very similar. They press the button, they parry the ability in front of them, and they can continue to finish their PA and continue to do what they got to do. The thing about it is that usually with skills like this, the thing about BAPS is it's very powerful. Blade Arts parry does a lot of damage. You guys saw in the clip I showed you earlier that Kai was hitting for 4K with it while hitting, I think it was like 800 or something like, or it might have been 4K with like 800 damage twice with the actual step counter. With all that damage put together, but if you're hitting with just BAP, it's quite a bit of damage on its own. So that is about the question. Is BAPS truly dead? Is it actually going away, or are we still going to see some form of it in the future? Now, my final thought is, if it is dead, awesome. A lot of us are very happy about it. But if it's not dead, that's okay too. A lot of things we've seen for Bouncer look really, really cool. The animations look amazing. The weapon action looks great. Fanatic Blade, fingers crossed, is hopefully gone and was replaced by the skill that we saw earlier. And the new system that we can see with the PAs kind of chaining together looks super dope as well. That, and if you actually look currently, we have another PA, like not a balance, but like a system where we're allowed to rework PAs essentially to do different things now is being introduced to the game as well. So these are two things that are coming out along the same side, which is going to be a pretty massive change for Bouncer overall. A lot of things are happening great. So if this thing still sticks around, it's not realistically the end of the world. However, I don't know that it will. One thing I've noticed is that a lot of the changes that are happening for Bouncer are changes we have quite literally proposed on the channel and on stream multiple times. And we know for a fact that Play PSO2 watches our streams. We don't know what's gotten to the dev team exactly. We've tried multiple times, but we don't know for sure what's gotten to them. So it's a good possibility they watch our streams. So I feel like the dev team knows that we are not the biggest fan of having to deal with Blade Arts parry step counter. It may have gone under the radar, it's possible, but we also didn't make a huge deal about it because the last time there was some broken tech on Bouncer, it got removed. We got nerfed because of it and got nothing out of the exchange. So we just kind of lost, right? And it kind of started the cascade of what was a big issue with Bouncer overall in the first place. So I'm skeptical, but I'm erring on the side of caution, but I'm still very hyped for the class rebalance. I think there is a chance BAP sticks around. I think realistically, best case scenario it sticks around as a secondary skill on your hop or something along those lines. It is also possible that it still performs the same way, that when you press weapon action during a PA instead of interrupting the PA, it does this skill. It is also possible that, hey, maybe they listen to us, and you know, the fact that you block something means that during that time frame, you know, if you block something, you actually get a reset of it. I feel like if that was the case, they would have shown it. They would have, you know, let us see that. But that's like absolute best case scenario, in my opinion, because even just interrupting your PA and getting a step counter with your weapon action really wouldn't be as good as BAP just actually allowing you to block abilities coming at you and having that rebalance. That would be kind of like what I want the most, as opposed to what I think would happen. Realistically, we've also not seen weapon action used during a PA, so this could just be what that is. So keep your expectations tempered. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I know I'm looking forward to this rebalance so much. It's insane. And don't worry, my JetBoo friends, they do this thing where they don't show us anything for one of the weapons all the time. Fingers crossed that your changes are less cosmetic and more mechanical. I'm specifically thinking about elemental set. I'm really hoping they do something about that, because elemental set is drastically over engineered, and it's caused so many more problems that needed to exist, and it's insane. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm really excited to read what you guys have to say. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to keep up with more, and I'll see you all next time. Take care, my friends. Peace out.